Hello everyone! In this video we are gonna have a look at how to use fonts in our applications. But first we need to figure out what font are we going to use in our apps. So we are currently in 2022, and how do we know what are the most popular fonts to use? Well, there are a lot of sites on the internet that show what the most popular fonts are. So I did a quick Google search and these are some links that came up. First of all, we have here a site, 30 best modern fonts for web and apps in 2022. And if you scroll down, there are a number of different fonts that are available that you can see here. So what I usually do is I try to figure out which fonts I like and which fonts I would like to have in my own apps. So the next thing that you would then need to do is to figure out where you can find these fonts. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. Let's have a quick look at a different site here. And here as well, we have some examples of fonts which are very popular in 2022, like this font, for example. And this site is nice because it also has different examples of the different weights of the font and how it would look like in an actual app. So this is the first thing that you would do, and search for these fonts. Once we have decided which font to use, we need to figure out how do we get that font in our application, or where can we find that font, because that's a file that we need to have, or something like that. All right. Now there's a very great resource from Google, which is called Google Fonts. And on this site, you have all of these different fonts that you can use in your own apps. So you can just freely download these fonts from this website and include them in your apps. Now you may be wondering, are these fonts available that we just saw on these websites? Well, actually, usually they are. So first, let's have a look here. For instance, Corona 1, which looks like a very neat font to use in our apps. Let's go over to Google Fonts and let's search for Corona 1. And as you can see, here is our font, and indeed it looks the same, and that's the one that we were looking for. You see here, there's a download family button which you can click, and then the font will be downloaded to your PC. I'm not going to use this font in my demo. I'm going to use a different font which I found on the internet and which I already downloaded, and that's the Ubuntu font, which I also really like. There you go. So if you want to follow along with this demo, click on the download family button. You will get a zip file, extract the zip file, put the fonts in a folder, and then you are ready to follow with this demonstration. Okay, let's go to Visual Studio and let's create a new project. So we're gonna create a new Flutter project. It's gonna be an application. This is the right folder when I want to store it, and I'm gonna input the name of my project here. Let's call it Fonts Demo in this case. And then we'll just have to wait a little bit until this has loaded. Once the project is loaded, we will have our typical Flutter demo application that we always use. And I will open it up in my emulator here on the side. This usually takes a little bit of time to first get installed on the emulator, but I think we are almost there. It's currently generating the APK package to install on the emulator. Okay, so the build is complete and currently it's installing on the emulator, and in a moment it will be available in here. There we go. So this is our standard application that we know. Let's close our widget inspector here. Now let's have a talk about how do we get these fonts in our application. Well, there are actually two ways that you can get these Google fonts in your application. You can add the fonts to your assets in your application, and this is the first thing that we will show. And then on the second thing, what we can do is we can actually use a package called Google Fonts, and this makes it extremely easy to add these fonts to your application. Now, one thing to keep in mind with the Google Fonts package is that you will need to have internet connection on your mobile device. Otherwise, the package will not be able to download the fonts to your application, and you will not be able to see the custom font from Google. So that's a thing that you definitely need to keep in mind, because usually people start asking questions in forums about this, but it's because their emulator or their demo smartphone doesn't have an internet connection. So definitely keep that in mind. All right, so let's add our fonts to the assets in our application. Let's go to the folder structure here, and let's create a new folder in here, and we are gonna call it assets. And in the assets folder, I'm gonna create a new folder called fonts. As I said before, I already downloaded the fonts on my PC. I extracted the zip file actually, and I have these fonts right here. What I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna drag the fonts into this folder. There we go. And here we see our Ubuntu font files. The files that you can add, well, actually the font files that you can add in your project need to have the extension TTC, TTF, or ODF. So keep that in mind when you download a font. The next thing what we will need to do is to make our assets or our fonts visible to our project. How do we do that? We do that via the pubspec.yaml file. In this file, you will be able, if you scroll a little bit down to the bottom here, you'll be able to add your custom fonts to your application. So the thing that you need to do is you need to uncomment this part here over here. And you can do this with a shortcut like I'm doing here, or you can just remove these pound signs here. All right, so currently this is referencing a font that I don't have in my project. So what I will do is I will just remove all of this. And as I said before, the font that I'm using is called Ubuntu. That's how the family is called. So what I will do is I'll just replace this here, and then I will also need to update this a little bit, because this is also another location. I have it in my assets folder /fonts, and then the font is actually called Ubuntu Bold. What I'm gonna do here, I'm just gonna add the regular font, so Ubuntu regular, there we go, to our project. Now I'm gonna save the pubspec.yaml file. What you possibly need to do is to restart the app or close the app again and start again, because sometimes it doesn't pick up the fonts. So I'm gonna do this just to be sure. Okay, so I closed the app, then I'm gonna start it again. And let's come back when this is done. All right, so I restarted the app in the emulator, and here it is again. Okay, so how do we make use of this font now in our application? Well, there are actually several ways that we can do this. We can make use of the ThemeData that you see here. This is part of our material app, and this contains some styling options which you can set across your entire application. So what you can do here, let's just remove these comments over here. We have defined some color here, which is the primary swatch, and as you can see in our application, this color comes back several times here. This is the primary color that is used in our application. If we would change this to a different color, then you will see that this gets updated in our application as well. What you can also do is you can also define a font in here, and this will also be used throughout your entire application. And this is actually something that we are going to do. So let's see which attribute that we need to use. This is the font family, and here we need to enter the family name of our font. We save this, and as you see, the font changes in our application. I'm just gonna do a quick revert of this. You see, this is definitely a different font. And then use our Ubuntu font, and here you will see that the font updated in our application. What you can also do is in a text widget, for example, you can also use a text style and then use the same font family referencing a different font, for example. I would advise to do it via the ThemeData, because then you will have more consistency in your application. The font will be the same everywhere. Let's say that, for example, you do want to have different headings in your application, and these different headings may have a different style, like a heading 1, heading 2, and things like that. Let's have a quick talk about TextTheme. Alright, so the TextTheme is part of our ThemeData, and this is the one that we were just talking about. The TextTheme specifically applies to the text in your application, and as I said before, in the ThemeData you can define like a layout theme for your entire app. So if you scroll down a little bit, you see here this is the primary color, this is the body text, this is the accent color, which is a different color that you can have in your application. There are many different things, as you see, that you can set in the ThemeData, and maybe in a future video we can dive into these different options that you can set. So this is definitely that you should check out if you are developing Flutter applications. As I said before, let's have a look at ThemeData. And ThemeData, this is something that specifically applies to the text in your application. So as you can see here, you have all of these different styles of text that you can have in your application. By default, there are several styles. You have the headings and the body text and the button text and so on. And these headings, for instance, or all of these styles actually, they have a default size that you can see here, the size of your text. And then you also have a weight of these fonts and a spacing and so on. What you can do is you can also override these headings to apply to your different style in the apps that you would like to have. And this is something that we are gonna have a look in the demo now. Okay, let's go back to our code here. And what we will do now is we will look for the attribute TextTheme, and we are gonna create a new TextTheme widget here. There we go. And let's look for that headline one. As you see, these are the different styles that we discussed before. If I would look for the body text, here you also have the body text in different sizes. I would like to override my headline one. And as you can see, this is looking for a text style widget. So let's have a text style widget here, and in this text style widget you can give your own properties to the styling. For example, let's say that we want to have our header one in a red color, for instance. We would do it like this. Let's make a const of this, that we don't get that warning. There we go. As we saw before, there is also a default size, font size of these headings. It was 96, if I'm not mistaken. You can also override that here if you want. So you can use all of the different properties of text style to customize your custom headline. All right, let's go now to our text widget in this example. For example, this text widget over here with the message you have pushed the button this many times. Let's say that we want to have this in our heading 1. So what I would need to do then is to select the style attribute, and this is also requiring a text style attribute. Let's enter here theme of context, so it's going to look in the context for that theme data, and then we are going to say, okay, now from our text theme which we just defined, we would like to have our headline 1. So it's saying me invalid constant value, so let's remove the const over here. There we go. Let's click on save, and as you can see, this has done something horrible to our demo application because the font size is so big, right? So what we can do now is we can move up to our text theme, and we can just say, okay, our font size needs to go a little bit down. Let's say, for example, 35, or let's take 35. There you go. And now our font size has been updated to this. So now in our entire application, if you would make use of these headings, it would look everywhere the same, red with a font size of 35. Let's add a comma here so it formats a little bit better. There we go. Alright, so that's it for the assets in the folder in our project, and we also had a quick look at ThemeData and TextTheme, the things that you can do with it. It's very interesting. I will put the documentation to these two widgets in the video description, so definitely have a look at that. As I said in the beginning of this video, there's also a second way to add these Google fonts to our application. And to be honest, that's an even more easier way to do it. The only thing that we need to do is to add the package, Google Fonts package, to our application. So how can we do this? We can go to the pubspec.yaml and add it there to the packages, or we can also use a shortcut. And I think we have it here at or update dependencies, and I'm gonna add the Google Fonts package to my application. As you can see here in the bottom, it's currently downloading the Google Fonts package to my project and adding it to my pubspec.yaml file. Let's go to our pubspec YAML file and see if the package was correctly added. And as we can see here, the package is now added to our application. All right, let's go back to our main.dart file, and let's say that we want to have let's say that we want to use a different Google font for a different text in our application. Let's search for a different text here. For example, our title here, which is also a text widget containing the title, and that's located in the app bar. That's regarding this text over here. Let's say that I would like to have a different font for this text. Then again, we would need to change the style of this text widget. So let's look for our style attribute. There we go. And as before, we would enter here a text style or reference the theme where the styling was located. Now we will look for something else. We will look for Google Fonts. And then if we do this, we see here all of the different fonts which are located on Google Fonts. So this is extremely handy to have. Let's for instance use Roboto, which is also a very popular font. And then this is also a text style, by the way. We can do some styling in this as well. If we save this, you will see in a moment that the text will also update on the right. Looks like I made a mistake here. Let's have a quick look what's going on. Let's maybe first restart the application just to be sure. No implementation found for methods. Let's maybe stop the application It's possible that the pubspec.yaml didn't get loaded in correctly. Let's restart the application again. Alright, it looks like a restart solved the issue over here. Now Google Fonts is known in our app and we can use it. In our demo application, you will see that currently the font has been updated. If you want to be sure that that's absolutely working, let's look for a different font. For example, let's see what we have here in the list. Let load for a bit. For example, this one here, don't know the font, not sure what it will look like, but let's see together. Okay, so now you will definitely see that the font has changed here to this Halloween looking font, right? Alright, so do keep in mind, as I said before, Google Fonts, the package needs to have internet connection. If you don't have internet connection, your font will not be downloaded to your app and it will not be working. Alright, let's do a quick summary. First of all, figure out which font that you would like to use in our application. Which font do you like personally and which font would you like to look at in your app? Then next, try to figure out if you can find the app via Google Fonts, and then it's probably best solution to use Google Fonts. If you want to be absolutely sure that your font is always shown, you can download the app from Google Fonts and put it in your assets folder, or you can obviously just use the Google Fonts package, and if there would be no internet connection, then they will just see like default font. So the next thing that we also did, we looked at ThemeData, which is a way to style your entire application. We also looked at TextTheme, which is a way to style all of the text in our application. And then we also saw before how we could use this in our application as shown here. There we go. I hope that this video was informative. If you liked the video, please subscribe, please like the video, leave a comment. I would really appreciate that and it would motivate me to create more videos. Alright, thanks a lot, have a nice day, bye bye.